Hey guys, it's Size. Back again with another Dragonflight Shadow Priest video, specifically going over the Vault of the Incarnate raid encounters. So, I'll be putting up the different talent builds that I used for the fight, I'll be talking about why I changed them, and specifically some tips and tricks about the fights to help you get through them a little bit easier. The raid is scaled back, it's not as difficult as some previous raids were. Blizzard did say that was intentional. They weren't looking to challenge Race to World first necessarily anymore. So with that being said, you don't need to follow these talent builds. You'll do just fine playing whatever you feel comfortable with. But if you want to be competitive as a Shadow Priest, there will be a best build. There just will be. It's the way that the spec works. There's a lot of variety, but there are going to be builds that sim higher than others. So that being said, I'm going to jump into the boss encounters. I'm going to talk you through the talent tree that I used and why. I'm going to tell you the tips and tricks about the fight that help you get the most out of your character. Thanks for watching. So, coming up on the screen now is your standard single target talent tree. So, it has your Mind Spike, Surge of Darkness for your single target instant procs, Dark Ascension to buff your non-dot damage, Yushraj for the Enrage and the Execute buff, as well as Cthulhu for your Insanity gen and the single target damage it does. You can run this talent build for the entirety of the raid, but running the same talent tree for every single boss isn't optimal. You're not going to get the most out of your class doing that. So, we do have another build. If you don't want to play Mind Spike, you can just talent out of it, and you can put the points that you will put into Mind Spike and Surge of Darkness into utility, or you can then head into Maddening Touch, depending on what build you want to play. However, if you're willing to do this and you don't want to play Mind Spike at all, you are dropping about 1% DPS. Regardless of what you put the points into, you're not going to make up that 1%. So, if you're that against Mind Spike, go for it. But I wouldn't advise doing it if you're in a competitive situation, as you are effectively losing 1% total damage, and it shows a lot. But with that, let's move on to Eranog. So, the first boss in the raid is notoriously relatively easy and straightforward. You can use your default single target talent tree, which involves your Surge of Darkness, Mind Spike, your Cthulhu and your Yushraj. However, if you really want to blast the ads that are going to be coming up, you can take Mindseer as a talent. You can use this build that I've got up on the screen, and you can either swap out Dark Ascension for Void Eruption, or vice versa. Dark Ascension means that you're going to be doing more single target damage to the boss generally, and it will pull ahead as there are classes that deal with ads a little bit better than Priest. But if you're adamant on doing the AoE damage and you're adamant on bursting these ads, you can take Mindseer into Void Eruption, and this will get rid of the ads pretty quickly. On top of that, some little tips about the fight. The boss moves very often. The boss is constantly moving back and forth to the edge of the room, to the middle, because you want to move the boss to the edge of the room when you're waiting for the prison ads to spawn. Try and save your Surge of Darkness procs for this. You want to be able to move and not lose out on any damage. So your Surge of Darkness procs means that you're going to be able to cast Mind Spike on the move, and as well as generating Insanity to be able to use Devouring Plague as well. However, you do kind of want to be standing still to make the most of Mind Flay Insanity. Shadow Crash is up for every single set of ads. As soon as you press it, it's going to go on cooldown, and it'll line up really well with the next ads. You can cast it just before the ads spawn, and then you get the timing right that it lands to make sure that they all get dots before they move. So make sure to try and practice this and get used to this. And if you're talented into Mindseer and Mind Devourer, save any procs that you get from Mind Devourer to make sure that you can use it when the ads spawn to make the most of your damage. With that, let's move on to the next boss, Primal Council. So, heading into the Primal Council, it's a 4-target counter-style fight. So, I would suggest that you swap to this 4-target talent build. It involves using Yogg-Saron as the thing from Beyond Cleaves, and you get it up quite often with all the shadowy apparitions going out. You're taking Shadow Crash with Psychic Link, and you're making sure to get the most out of your Mindbender by Inevitable Demise. So, on normal and heroic, you'll probably find that the bosses are stacked the entire duration, there's not really much call for using Mind Spike or many single target abilities outside of your Mind Blast in order to proc Mind Devourer. So with the targets being stacked this entire time, you want to make sure you're Mind Searing out of your mind, using all your procs on Mind Seer, and making sure that your dots are up 99% of the time at least. There should be no excuse for dropping them, especially when you're playing Mind Seer and it extends the duration of your dots. It's a really fun fight for Shadow. You can get the most out of it by making sure that you're using the procs instantly. You're not using Mind Blast back to back, and you're waiting to see if you do get that Mind Devourer proc, as if you waste a proc on this fight, it's massively going to affect your damage. You can use Dark Ascension or Void Eruption. It's completely up to you. Void Eruption does line up really well with cooldowns, and it means that it's going to be hitting all 4 targets. You can extend the duration with Void Bolt as well. But with this, let's move on to the tips and tricks. So, all 4 bosses must die within a few seconds of each other. So, as a Shadow Priest, even though you're multi-dotting, you're naturally going to do more damage to the target that you're targeting. Make sure to swap consistently to the highest target boss. And as long as you've got Devour and Plague on one target in Void form, try to stay on it, because obviously you've got the most out of your mastery. But avoid target swapping often, as you will probably see the other classes are going to be doing a lot more single targets, and it's going to affect your damage and how you are damaging as well. So make sure that you're using your Mind Seers effectively and you're Mind Blasting the correct target. So you can soak both circles of Meteor Axes, which is the big red soak with Dispersion. However, you might still want to just soak one, as you want to hold Dispersion for an emergency situation. You don't really want to use it just to soak when the entirety of the raid can do that. You want to save up your Mind Blast procs when clearing stacks of Frost Tomb, or you're dropping your Electric Circle, as you can see some people doing right now. You drop that on the Little Mountains. So save your single target procs for when you need to move. When you're put into the kick rotation, you might want to use Last Word. So that just means that you'll have a lower cooldown on your kick, you're more useful to the raid, and it means that you're going to have more of a chance of being in the kick rotation as well. So, Mind Games is a bit iffy here. It's a single target ability. It's not going to do a lot on a raid encounter. So if you want to swap out Mind Games for Power Word Life to do a little bit more off healing, especially as some people can drop pretty quickly on this fight, that's also a nice little thing that you can do to help your raid out. But it's completely up to you as the player. Next, we've got Sennarth, Spider Boss. So, coming into Sennarth, there's 2 different builds that you can choose to do. You can choose to use a single target build that has a bit of ad burst, as there are quite a few small and big ads on this fight. It depends how much single target you want to drop, but if you take this one, you're going to be doing a little bit more ad damage with Yogg-Saron. You're still going to be taking your Shadow Crash, but you're not speccing into Mind Seer. So, as long as you're making sure you've got your Mind Bender up with an Inevitable Demise, you've got your Shirage and your Shadow Crashing at the right time when they're all stacked, you're going to do a decent bit of damage with this build. However, on the other hand, we have a single target build that focuses more on 2 targets. So you're not taking your Void Torrent, however, you are going to be taking 1 point into Psychic Link and 2 points into Dark Evangelism. So this build means that you're going to be focusing on the boss and the big Spider Ad. You're not really going to be using the little ads for anything other than maybe proc and Twist of Fate. But with this build, you're going to ensure that you're going to be finishing the big ad in a decent amount of time, as well as funneling into the boss. But you don't have Void Torrent in this build, so it gives you a bit more of an option, especially with how much you're moving on this fight as well. Alternatively, you could just use the standard single target build that we've used on the first few bosses. Completely up to you, but these are some of the viable options that you have to use. So, some tips for this boss. If you use Fade with Phantasm, you can actually mitigate the slow effects that you have, as Fade reduces the effects of slow abilities, of roots and snares, and it means you're not going to have as much of a risk when the boss pulls you in with their web. You can use Dispersion, when you're being pulled in to have the movement speed buff as well if you're talented into it. But don't feel like you need to run up the stairs. You want to save procs and you want to farm those instant casts for when you do have to move, and you can hold on to them for a while. You don't have to send your Mind Devourer proc instantly. You can save it for a movement heavy part of the fight, and you're not going to lose out on much damage either. So, as mentioned before, you can get a very high uptime with Twist of Fate, providing you're casting Shadow Wave Pains or even Vampiric Touches with Misery onto the small lads. You can hold Shadow Crush as well, as we are using it, and especially if you can see on the timers that the little lads are going to be spawning, don't hold it for more than a few seconds then. If it's going to be on cooldown if it's going to be up for longer than, let's say, 3-4 seconds before the ad spawn, just send it on the boss. It's a lot of damage to be losing, and you don't really want that. So, coming up next, we've got Dathea Ascended. So, for Dathea, it really depends on if you're going to the platform to be dealing with the ads, or if you're going to be staying down and hitting the boss. If you are going to the platform, however, this is the kind of build you're going to want to be taking. It has a lot of ad damage without sacrificing much single target. You still have your Dark Ascension, you still have your Cthulhu, your Mindflay Insanity, but you're not taking Mind Spike. This means that when you get sent over to the platform, you're still going to be doing a decent chunk of damage to the ads. However, if you find that the ads are dying quickly and your damage isn't really needed, you could default back to the single target build that we've shown at the start of the video. So, little tips about this fight. You can keep track of Cyclone to make sure that you're banking up your procs or your instant casts, so as you're running away from the boss while being pulled in, you're not losing out on any damage. This means Mind Devourer, Devouring Plague procs, you're going to be using Shadow Crash, you're going to be using Mind Blast procs, and if you are playing the single target build, you're going to be using those Surge of Darkness procs as well. It just means you're not going to be losing out on any damage. And if you save Vampiric Embrace for the intermission, when the healers are split between the platforms, you're going to be helping out a hell of a lot. Your raid's going to love you for this, because Vampiric Embrace is still such a huge healing cooldown, and when you're lacking healers, it's really going to make the difference between a wipe or a clean kill. Coming up next, we have Terros. So, with Terros being a purely single target encounter, I highly suggest that you just use this standard single target talent build. It makes the most of Surge of Darkness, Yushraj, Cthulhu, and 1 point into Mind Devourer to make sure you're getting Devouring Plague procs as well. So, as there's not much to talk about with the talent build here, I'm just going to jump straight into the tips. It is quite a straightforward boss, but there are some things that can make or break some of the players' runs in this encounter. So, Leap of Faith can help the rest of your raid position quickly for Awakened Earth. If somebody's out far to the side and you know you need to be stacked to soak, you can Leap of Faith them back in. But on Mythic, you can remove infused Fallout stacks without realising it. So make sure you're communicating and you're coordinating this with the person that you're going to be gripping. And for a little defensive outside of using Dispersion, as you kind of want to save it for an oh shit button, make sure to use Fade and Flash of Light with Protective Light talented before soaking the big soak. You also want to make sure that you're using your feathers and making the most out of your own mobility to stack at the right time. And try having the Dimensional Gateway toy, the one that means that you don't have to click on the gateway. As in Mythic, it requires you to move quickly to get to the next part of the room. But with the amount of players in the raid, you might not be able to click it consistently, and having this toy keybind means that you're just safely going to take the gateway without any danger to wiping or causing the death. And coming up next, we've got Kurog Grimtotem. So, other than on Mythic, this boss alternates between single target and 2 targets, depending on the phase that you're in. In Mythic, you will drop the single target and just have a lot of ads coming up during the phase instead. But because of this, we have a standardized 2 target build that kind of prioritizes 2 target damage but still has a very strong single target, as the boss does have a lot of health, and in the intermissions you really need to have single target to burst down those ads. So because of this, we're taking Void Eruption, we're still taking Mind Spike with Surge of Darkness, but we are playing Yogg-Saron for that cleave as well. So, some tips for the fight. With the suggested talent build, even though we're taking Mind Seer, we only want to cast Mind Devourer procs while in Void form, or whether it's on single target, purely just because you're making the most out of your mastery. And even when you're facing 2 targets in the intermission, you still want to be blasting 1 down, because if you try and cleave them down at the same time, you're going to take a lot of raid damage and it could potentially cause a wipe. So even more of a reason for you to specifically aim towards getting down one of these ads as quick as possible. But if you do want to do more damage in the 2 target selections, drop Mind Spike and Surge of Darkness for Psychic Link. Psychic Link doesn't affect single targets, so your single target will suffer, but it does mean that you will have more AoE and more cleave for the entirety of the fight. If your group's struggling with getting hit by too many slows, or you're just starting progression, make sure to take Master Spell, and maybe Empowered Master Spell just to help out the healers, as it means everybody can get back into position relatively quickly without much danger to wiping. During the intermission, the boss is immune, but your shadowy apparitions and your dots will still generate insanity, so make sure you still want to maintain your dots on him. However, redotting should be pretty low on your priority list, and it's something that you should do when your cooldowns are down. But other than that, those are the tips I've got for that fight. And moving forward, we're going on to the penultimate boss, Broodkeeper Build. So, moving on to Broodkeeper Build, which is arguably one of the most hectic fights in this raid encounter, it completely depends on the strategy that you're using, right? So, as a Shadow Priest, you'll probably be on the ads most of the fight, but if your group needs more boss damage, we can talent into more single target. But this is the build that I used, and I think probably going to be the best going forward for most priests, as it gives you access to good add damage while you still have Mind Flay Insanity for the boss damage. However, you can purely go single target, that's completely up to you, but choose the build that you need for your raid, right? If you need single target, go single target. If your guild needs more damage on the adds, stay the add build. You're not going to lose out on much by swapping to either one, but in the last phase it is purely single target, so bear that in mind in progression. Changes on the difficulty, and that also means that your raid might need different things from you. However, while the boss needs to be 50 yards away from the ads, you can hit the boss and the ads with good tank positioning. So good communication with your raid leader, your tanks, making sure you're still in range to keep a very high uptime on dots on the boss, as sometimes the ads can spawn on the complete opposite side of the room. Focus your damage onto one or the other, otherwise trying to split your damage too much is going to result in a lot of damage lost. So make sure you're either pumping Mind Seers or Devouring Plagues into your prior target, otherwise you are going to be insanity capped for a while and you're going to waste a lot of damage. So try to only spend insanity on Mind Seer when there's 3 or more targets, or if you've got a Mind Devourer proc, try and decide this on the go, because you don't want to be insanity capped, but at the same time you don't want to be Mind Seering 2 targets when you could Devour and Plague the boss for a lot of single target damage. The Primalist Mage adds, you can mind control it for a decent amount of passive damage throughout the fight. You can't keep it up 100% of the time, but if you do mind control it, you do get a decent passive damage boost. And you can also cast Master Spell on the Cauterizing Flash Frames from the Dragonspawn Flamebender. So while it's healing and it's got that haste buff, you can Master Spell it and get rid of it straight away. Means it's easier to kill as well. So that's all I have for you for this video, guys. So the reason I'm leaving out Rastagath is because even though I've done progress on it, we haven't killed it yet. And I don't want to put up a video until we've killed it. I'm going to kill it tonight with my guild, so I might decide to redo the video. I might do a video purely on Rastagath, but I don't want to put out something for you guys that isn't 100% accurate. So I hope you understand. That's the only reason I've not put it out. But if you keep following the channel, you comment, you like and subscribe for me, I'll make sure that you get the Rastagath video within the next couple of days as well, as I assume a lot of you guys are going to be coming up to it as well, and it's going to make a difference having a point of view as well. I have still been streaming on Twitch. I've been putting in a hell of a lot of hours for this expansion, and I continue to going forward. So make sure you hop over to the Twitch and give that a follow as well. I'd really appreciate that. And I'm sorry for the content drought, guys. It's just, there's not been anything to put out. I understand a lot of my community only really want Shadow Priest content, so I didn't want to put out videos on just random crap. But definitely going forward, I'm going to be making sure there's more videos. Now the Dragonflight's out and there's a lot of content to do, I'm going to make sure I'm doing videos on it, especially when it comes to Shadow Priest, guides and information. So thank you so much for sticking by me this long, guys. I appreciate the support, and I'm sorry it's a longer video, but I wanted to make sure I got in all the builds, all the tips, to make sure that you guys are knowledgeable for the raid. But with that, guys, take care, and thank you for watching.